She took the time to create a whole list of questions trying to understand the builder that we're getting ready to work with. What are their styles of communicating? What are their pain points that they've experienced working with other designers? What are some things that we should know about working with you to be successful? And I think that says it all right there about how Noble kind of approaches projects.
So very excited for the podcast today. Welcome, Kate.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we have Kate Haynes. She's the owner and lead designer at Noble Studio, and we met from a good friend of mine and former guest, Tony Frazier, and here we are.
Yep.
Connecting well on the podcast now.
It's come full circle because I initially heard of Tony. I was vaguely aware of him in Raleigh, but then heard him on your podcast. I listened to AFT construction podcasts for like 4 years now, and I heard the episode that he was on. I remember working in my home office at the time, and he was describing how he started from his dining room table and just kind
Hmm.
of the growing pains of his business and how he went through growing it over time. And then it was probably a year or so later, I found myself in his office for a client project and kind of chatted with him after the meeting about some of the things he brought up on the podcast, like the pumpkin plan, that book
Hmm.
about focusing on like one thing and doing it really well, and some of the other business related things he'd brought up. And then we kind of hit it off from there to start working together.
It's amazing. It's funny because it's such a small community,
Hmm.
between whether podcasts or Instagram and social media,
Yeah.
and we go to the same networking events between the design and architecture and builder community, and um, so with that first meeting you had with Tony, I mean, this was your first project you had worked with them, or did you reach out
Yep.
hearing about the podcast?
Well, it turned out we then figured out I had worked on a project that he had drawn in the previous year, and we photographed that one last year, and it turned out beautifully. So, but we didn't collaborate directly on that. The plan's already completed, and we just were brought in for finishes and furnishings and all that. So we had kind of like accidentally collaborated prior to knowing each other, but then that was the first project that we were involved in. Having a hand in kind of tweaking the plans as they were coming to life and making some decisions alongside the Fraser team. And that allowed us a little bit more face time to sort of see glimpses of each other's processes and the way that we think and work through design problems.
Maybe go through that aspect when you talk about working through design problems. I know the relationship has come full circle. I mean, it's much farther now
Mm-hmm.
than it was 3 years ago,
Yeah.
2 years ago. What does that look like now when you're collaborating with an architect such as Tony? What are some of the um, items of importance that you both are
Yeah.
addressing and working on together?
Well, just yesterday we were in a meeting with a client, and their plans are very much at this stage. Tony's already met with them and kind of done an initial concept and a plan, and then we get to come in and see it when it's still super pliable. So we're thinking through, um, for example, there's this little bar area off of a media room, and I could immediately see that the depth of it was kind of uncomfortable for being this alcove off of the room. So we thought, hey, what if we opened it up to the hallway and it had this adjacency to this wine area and it has this different sight line. So Tony and his team are great at thinking about those things as well. But I feel like Noble, we come in and bring just a different perspective with the way that the house will feel living in it, and different opportunities for just bringing character and sweetness and balance and all these things into the plan at a very early stage when it's still pliable enough that we can be collaborative.
So by pliable, you're saying when it's like floor plan stage and you haven't gotten to
Hmm.
engineering and down the
Yeah.
road where it gets a little complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. The implications are less. People are less irritated by us throwing a wrench in things. This way we get to kind of have a hand in things without disrupting the process. It's just a lot. It's much more streamlined because you've got these voices in the room earlier. It creates a much more, like, the end outcome is just so much more beautiful for one, but also it's more planned for, which makes everybody happy, even on the build side, because we've got, I mean, I think that anytime that we've interacted with a plan, that we've been brought in for finishes, I can't think of a single time where we haven't asked for some walls to move a little bit, or some different framing changes or things that happen along the way, which then trickles into lighting and all the various things. And it's just nice to be able to be there from square one where we can make those changes early and then not have to be doing rework for anybody.
How often at that pre-construction, how often are you actually modifying either room sizes, layouts, locations, at that pliable stage?
All the time, all the time. And it's also interesting. You said room size. We do. It's interesting. I feel that often my role is a little bit of bad cop. It's like, hey, do we need to bump that out and make that extra square footage? A lot of times at this stage, the wish list is long for clients that we're working with. There's like media rooms and gyms and spas and golf simulators and all these things that are getting incorporated, and the square footage grows and grows. And it's so easy to just draw some lines on a page that adds thousands of dollars onto the bottom line.
Hmm.
So my viewpoint is, hey, y'all, don't spend all the money before I get to get in there with finishes, because I know what will
Right.
happen. So so the larger the house, the less money there is for me to play with on finishes. So like I'm also there sort of as a voice of reason, like, hey, could we solve this problem a different way without just bumping it out or adding more? Um, so that's another thing that we try to do to add value along the way.
Well, it's really important because that's where things escalate, right? All our clients have a budget. They come in with what they're expecting to pay, and then the house grows, the room size grow, and
Exactly.
quickly you have an initial conversation. And this is for me as a builder, in most cases where we're discussing budget, then all of a sudden we look at the new plan set, and I'm like, hey, you wanted to be here, you're going to be
Yeah,
double that based on what we're planning.
exactly. Yeah, and I just see that, the allowances that we end up with at the end of the day are going to be a lot healthier. I think that the client really needs to understand the implications of adding those little square footage bumps all over the place, because they're not putting it together necessarily, that those decisions that feel like the right decision when you're sitting in a room with somebody who can draw you the plan, they don't recognize the implications that trickle down to, like, but I won't then be able to have the cabinetry that I've been dreaming of, or the level of finish that they really do want and just don't recognize the true cost of at that time.
So, as you're working through this design phase, how often do architects push back as you're coming in and putting your
Well,
staple on their plan set?
well, I mean, honestly, working with Tony's been great. He's very, he's got less of an ego than I expected. No, he's actually very pliable. A lot. I keep using that word, but like everybody's on the same page. We want the outcome of the finished product that we can be really excited about. So I think I don't get that much pushback, at least working with him. I have other architects that I've worked with I've been fortunate not to have a lot of like ego in the room. And I also don't think that our team embodies that. We just really
Mhm.
want a beautiful outcome for everyone, and we want our clients to really feel taken care of. So um, it seems like if you're leading with the right goals in mind, that doesn't become an issue. And it's all in the delivery of your thoughts as well. Try to be sensitive.
Well, it's nice. It's nice when you have someone like Tony who's super creative, right? Someone that's very
Hmm.
creative, but still open to the collaboration because that can be difficult. Early
Yeah.
on, I think one of the first podcasts I had Carolina Cesare and Jamie Rose. We just finished a project. They're kind of finishes don't have feelings, and I think it's tough to kind of have that mindset because as a designer, as you're looking at design and you've created this amazing design, and a client comes in and they're like, I just don't like that, right?
Yeah.
And it's really easy because there's a creative side. You've put thought into this. There's been
Hmm.
time put into this. And I can only imagine that as a creative, there is a sense of pride because you put a lot of pride and there's education and there's
Right.
experience that's led to this. Same as the architects. And so be able to put that aside and just kind of look at it black and white, saying, well, finishes don't have feelings, floor plans don't have feelings. Like, let's just figure out the best solution to make this work.
Yeah.
That's when you achieve that great success.
Yeah, I like that. I think we all have kind of our hills to die on creatively, or like stylistically. And so whenever that happens, I had a client conversation recently around an island. It was an island. We went back and forth about, are we going to make it like furniture style with like legs and openness, and it was going to be really beautiful. And then it was a little bit of back and forth around the design. Um, and I was fighting for it a little bit, but I'm always telling clients at the end of the day, this is your house. I want you to really feel happy about the decisions we're making, and I'm not going to bully you into seeing it my way. But I made one last pitch. Like I said, I will not bring this up again, y'all. Just know that you have this custom cabinetry maker sitting here who's extremely talented and can make you anything. And I don't want to see you spend that resource on something that looks standard. And that's all I'm going to say about it. So we just let it go. And I think similarly, whether it's working with Tony or someone else, I think that kind of being aware when there's something that feels like there's a big reason why, like in the case of the island, I didn't there was an opportunity I didn't want them to miss just by virtue of making some decisions around storage that we could kind of surmount a different way. And with anything design wise, I think understanding the why of why is someone approaching the problem that way? Why is this important to them? Is there is there a symmetry issue that they're trying to protect? Just trying to understand why and sort of like support each other in meeting those goals, I think goes a long way to having a good collaborative relationship.
Yeah, it's a really important aspect to the design. And what's interesting is going back to the personality side, the ego side, if you will. We were interviewing a
Mm-hmm.
client, and it was funny because his perspective, him and his wife were sitting in front of our office, and they said, as they were kind of going through the interview process with different builders and designers and architects, they said, sometimes you get the feeling where, am I working for you or are you working for me? Right. Because like he said, sometimes, like the builder was super pushy or the architect was or the designer was. And so he's like,
Mm-hmm.
this relationship's kind of interesting because I don't know who I'm working for,
Yeah.
or how this is
Yeah.
working. And so there's a fine balance to, and it's not the assertiveness, but as you mentioned, it's a fine balance to really being a client advocate, right? Being a good steward of
Yeah.
what they're investing and pointing them in the right direction and trying to listen and interpret everything that they're creating in their mind. And then you're putting that down on paper.
Yeah. Exactly. I agree with that. I think that is, yeah, trying not to be pushy ever, but always trying to advocate for what your client may not know without your guidance in the room.
Yeah. And
Don't want
along
them to
those
miss
lines, it's
out.
funny. One of the reasons I'm such a proponent of interior design is, I've been through this, and what I mean by that is that the client has an expectation in their mind, right? They maybe have traveled somewhere, they may have seen a Pinterest picture, they have an image,
Yeah.
they want the space to look at, and what's really
Hmm.
difficult for us as the builder is interpret what they're
Yeah.
thinking, get on paper, and execute it and build it properly. Whereas if you have a
Hmm.
really good designer that's doing that and now taking interpreting that vision from the client, putting it on paper, giving me, here's your overhang for your countertop, right? Here's the edge detail on
Hmm.
the countertop, like down to those finite details, like, hey, Brad, here's where I want the seams, that we're gonna have to do working with our fabricator. And that's just countertops. I mean, you have so many different items there.
Yeah.
And that's where I think most clients don't know what they don't know, and they don't realize the amount of thought and effort that goes in. Because at the end of the day, if I have a good design set, I'm going to build it properly, and I don't have this finger pointing at the end saying, Brad, well, that's not what I expected. I didn't think it would look like this now that's installed.
Right. That's right. And I think to piggyback on that, I think that clients, to your point, they may have traveled somewhere and seen something that really like struck a chord with them deeply somewhere and resonated. And they're aiming toward feeling that way again. When they walk into their home, they want to feel that same kind of way. And I think that without a designer who can translate and understand that vision into the checklist of what is the countertop overhang, what is the edge detail, where are the seams, without all of somebody that can understand that vision and then distill it into those little pieces and parts, you something is lost. So part of the part of the way that that I connected with Tony, some of our like initial conversations were around um, being able to guide a vision for the interior of the house the same way that they approach their exteriors. So I felt that there was some missed opportunity just in terms of like the intentionality that they approached the exterior detailing with. The interiors were missing some of that to in some of the projects I'd seen. Um, and I really wanted to have the opportunity to create that same sense of intentionality inside the house. So distilling a big picture vision of like a mood that you feel when you walk in, that falls apart when you're just selecting pieces and parts just because they are pretty and they look good together. It's much more than that. It's really like creating kind of a story and a sense of place and drawing inspiration from architecture that's timeless and not just like making selections that check the boxes for the builder. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's
And
really
we
good.
do all that part too.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's both. We have to do it all. We have to check the boxes, but what we really want to bring to Raleigh, especially where we are, is kind of this like upper level of design that really has that timelessness and like sense of place that you miss if you're just checking the boxes.
Maybe we pivot this way, especially when you bring in Raleigh. So with Raleigh and kind of the demographic you have there, what does that look like? I mean, how pertinent is it for clients to understand that, hey, I need an interior design? What does the design community look like?
I think that our community is like it's it's a happy little family that's growing bigger by the day. I feel like there's something happening in Raleigh that I'm really excited about. I think for a long time, I think it is a very rapidly growing place. I think there's a lot of new construction happening. I think that it's been a place that's been primarily driven by people coming, wanting to build a house, finding a builder as an afterthought, choosing people to help them make selections. So I always designate that like selections versus like true design. So I think it's been kind of like a builder and selections coordinator kind of dominated market for a long time, which I'm not knocking. That's super important. Um, so what I'm seeing is a little bit more of a push toward kind of creating a deeper sense of like meaning in what we're doing as designers. And I think that that's really exciting. So there's lots of growth, lots of people kind of like-minded coming out of the woodwork, which is really exciting to see.
It's amazing. And going back to kind of Noble Studio and Fraser Design, that collaboration, I would imagine you work with other architects as well, specifically with Tony Fraser. I mean, how has that relationship evolved where now there's a lot more collaboration? I know you guys aren't business partners per se, but you
Right.
are working together on a lot of signature projects.
Yeah. So it's been just a cool thing to watch as he's been sort of like weaving us into projects wherever it feels like a good fit. So we're partnering directly with the client, and so the client is hiring us directly. They're hiring Tony directly, and then we're just working together, kind of as early as possible. We're just jumping into the design process with him and his team. So generally, that means they've kind of like gotten a few meetings under their belt, and they've done a little bit of preliminary work, and then we're reviewing plans throughout the process to sort of see if there are any large areas of concern where we could see something else being a better solution, but we're also sitting in on meetings when possible to sort of be able to like be a live voice in the room to sort of we ask different questions than Fraser and his team do as designers. So we're in there early, and then we're going to be informing kind of they're doing 3D renderings throughout their process. They do like all this cool tech stuff. They can walk people through in VR to see their house and all this. So we figured like rather than using their generic finishes for all of that rendering, we might as well sort of combine our forces because we're also doing renderings as part of our process. So now we're working on sort of collaborating on that part. So we're able to take our finishes that we were going to be putting in our own renderings and sort of pushing them over to their team and putting them in their renderings. So the client's able to see from a much earlier stage, sort of the spirit of their house before they're diving into true selections. So then from there, we're able to continue on with the client through the whole process of selecting finishes with their builder. We're doing the whole spec book as our team. We do interior drawings, elevations, lighting plans, all of the technical detail that goes in to building a project, and specifying all the materials with the builder and their preferred vendors and walking through the whole process.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I kind of alluded to one of the challenges as builders is when you're trying to interpret something, right? Having a designer that's
Mm-hmm.
going to spell it out for us as a builder, right? Is super advantageous.
Yeah.
However, there's still a step there for the client that even for us as a builder, I think being in the industry for a long time, I can look at a 2D set of drawings, whether it's, a shower design by a designer or whether it's a floor plan, or exterior detail by the architect. And you can visualize that. I'm sure you can as well,
Yep.
right? Same for you, Kate, that, being in it, but clients have a hard time visualizing the space. You can lay out
Mm-hmm.
all the samples in your office on the table, they can have everything there, but it's still hard for them to really visualize what that's going to look like. So when you take the extra step of working with Fraser and you have, full VR, they're walking through, how does that
Mm-hmm.
impact not just the pre-construction process, but how does that impact the actual build?
I think there's less surprises, obviously, that probably goes without saying. There's a lot more confidence on the part of the client that things are going to feel and look the way they want them to as they're proceeding through all those moments of the build. So I think I think for us, it's really just a matter of getting them feeling settled and at peace with like the big picture things and helping to build trust with them along the way as we're showing them there really will be room for everything you want and this really will feel amazing when you walk in. It's like about getting them a little bit pumped about their house, and then we're able to sort of build that on that excitement to help them catch our vision at a more full level as we're kind of moving through our process of creating mood boards for them with all the beautiful finishes and down to the furnishings and styling and art and all those things. So the 3D renderings are super helpful. I have also seen them work against us at times. So it kind of depends on the client and the way that that tool can either be a distraction or a help at times. It's really interesting.
It can be a distraction too. I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Or also there's the like, at a certain point we use the renderings as a conceptual tool and then something will shift down the road and they'll be wanting to see an updated rendering. So that can also cause kind of like a slowdown in your process if you're having to always go back and update the rendering, which is really just meant for conceptual purposes for the most part. So it's interesting. You
Yeah,
need to be
clients definitely
careful with
want
your
more than,
tools.
yeah, they're going to want more than the conceptual. They want to see a finish so they can, follow that along through
Hmm.
the entire build process.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
So why design?
Yep. Um, I think I think that it is something that chose me from a really early age. I just knew that that was where I was headed. So I grew up a creative kid, super easily entertained on my own, very like building tree houses in the woods kind of kid. And then probably, I mean, as a teenager, I just knew that that was where I was headed. I had the opportunity to see some beautiful homes that really left an impact on me through like family friends and designed by really notable architects, and I didn't know such a thing was possible, and it really like left a mark on me. And from that point forward, that was my direction. So I chose a school where I could get an interior design degree, and have been down here in the South ever since then. I went and worked for a design build firm shortly after that. So my interior design love, kind of like my first stop in my career journey, was at a construction firm where we were like designing and building. We were out in the field with tool belts and the whole nine yards. So it was a bunch of young people, lots of architecture students from NC State, and just like a super creative bunch. But we were learning how to actually construct, and then we were designing with clients in the studio on other days. So it's just always, for me, design has always been like part of um, my story from a really young age. And then the construction piece kind of came in alongside it early on as well. And so I kind of feel like I've been a designer at heart, but also like really sympathetic to the build side as well, and really like love the construction side, which I think hopefully gives me my firm a little bit of an edge in the build community, because our builders have been our greatest kind of advocates for us with clients to get new work and all that kind of thing as well. So that's been really cool.
How
But
have you,
design too,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry,
No.
design also, I feel like part of what it's just so impactful in the spaces that we spend all of our time in. It really matters what they feel like and how they look, but how they function and what kind of mood they bring. It really makes a huge difference, obviously, in how you feel every day. So I feel like it can cost just as much to have an ugly room as it does to have a beautiful one many times. So why not? Why not make it beautiful?
That's an interesting perspective. I've never heard it said that way. That yeah, it takes just as much money to create an ugly room as a beautiful room. So
Hmm.
invest in what's
Hmm.
beautiful. One of the questions a lot of designers have, especially as they've looked to expand their business, is how to expand, the builder base. How they're working with other builders.
Hmm.
How have you, opened up that arm of business development?
Yeah. I think that this is kind of just like good fortune where we were at as a business at the time. So I started I started the business. I was originally called Kate Haynes Interiors back in 2018, and I was very part time. I have four children, and my youngest was in preschool at the time. And I just started very slowly with. So I had been, as I mentioned, I went to design school and then worked in the design build world for a little bit, and then started having children. And I was a stay at home mom for 10 years and didn't do anything else but take care of kiddos. So slowly over time, we renovated the house that we were living in, and that was kind of ignited again that passion in me. And I truly thought that I had like put design aside, that I was just going to focus on being a mom. And um and and then we did this project, and I dove into it, did drawings, just like hand drew elevations and scale drawings for everything. And my contractor took note and was like, these are really great drawings, this would be really helpful, like, would you do some drawings for me for another project? And so that was kind of like one of many things at the time that was sort of falling into my lap from a perspective of sort of slowly dipping my toe back into work. And so that was happening. And then as the business grew a little bit, like I started to I started out with like a kitchen or a bath, just renovation projects. So that meant being on site a lot and just sort of like seeing how things were going. But really it was around 2020 or 2021. I reached out to one particular contractor in our area who I noticed online was doing a lot of he was doing an influencer's house, and he was happened to be in my town, and I just reached out and I was like, hey, like we should grab coffee sometime and just chat and see if we have like, you know, shared business goals, that kind of thing. So we started doing a ton of work together, and we still work together. Ken and Construction is their business, and they're super great at renovations, just like really have their finger on the pulse of what clients need for renovation, which is really different from what clients need in a
Yeah.
new build. Um, and so we've done some really neat work with them and kind of grown alongside them. So that was like a really kind of right place, right time, special opportunity, because we were both kind of like going on the same path with our business. We we're both similar ages in our business and all that kind of stuff. So we shared a lot of bumps and bruises together and a lot of candid conversations, and just figuring out the ropes of doing good work together. And then, you know, just little by little, I did another renovation around the same time and met a builder who I've gone on to do a lot of new construction with, who also happens to be my new partner, my guy. So
Wow,
that's been a
congrats.
great, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I really love builders. No, just kidding. I love that builder, but he's taught me a lot too. I mean, just getting to know, understanding like what the pain points are of builders, and really understanding what makes them feel supported by a designer on a project, and also what makes them feel unsupported by a designer on a project.
Hmm.
I asked a lot of questions of my builders, like early on, you know, just I want to be successful. I want you to want to hire me again. I want you to be like excited that Noble's on your project, not feeling like your life is more complicated because it's just another loud voice in the room telling you what to do. So I've kind of like taken the approach of really wanting to support um, builders as much as the client, and then packed on a lot of knowledge just through listening to your podcast and lots of other resources to really educate myself on how to show up super professionally to a build project.
I think that's really good perspective. I mean, the insight there, Kate, is that when you speak about, I think many of us can relate to. We want to expand our business. You know, me as a builder, I want to meet designers, I want to meet architects, right? You're trying to meet that ideal client. And same for you. But what's interesting is you're taking the value approach that it's one thing to go meet a builder and be like, I want to work with you. You know, you're working with this influencer. I mean, whatever it may be. But your strategy is a little bit different in the sense that you're trying to bring value by understanding their pain points and, you
Mm-hmm.
know, understand how they run their business. And, you know, asking a question such as the one you asked, where you're like, what frustrates you about the interior designer on the project or in past experiences, you know?
Yeah.
And then, so if you're looking to bring value, any, I'd find it really hard for any builder that's looking to expand their business as well. Or, you know, many of us entrepreneurs are always trying to find another competitive edge or way to level up, if you will. And so if you have a designer that's on board, that's looking to partner with you and essentially solve that, I mean, why would they not hire you, right?
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean that's the way it's worked. I really value those relationships, and I really, obviously it goes without saying, I really value my client relationships as well. But in most cases, I'm going to keep working with that builder on many houses to come, whereas the client I may work with one time. So it's
Hmm.
like just really understanding. I think that all too often it's kind of like pointing fingers or like throwing each other under the bus, from what I hear, and it's like never been my MO to go that way. I just think it's we're in it together, and
Hmm.
when the builder's winning, we're winning, and vice versa. And so, you know, we can't get our beautiful ideas out into the world without you guys, and you guys look a lot better when we're doing our job well. So everything, you know, I just think we should have each other's back, and it's worked out well. So I do. We interestingly, just before hopping on this call, one of my team members was working on a draft of a builder questionnaire that we're going to start using at the beginning of our build project. So she took the time to create like a whole list of questions, trying to understand the builder that we're getting ready to work with. Like, what are their kind of styles of communicating. What are their pain points that they've experienced working with other designers? What are some things that we should know about working with you to be successful? And I think that that says it all right there about how Noble kind of approaches projects.
I like the builder questionnaire because there's so many different layers to that relationship between builder and designer, right? And at the
Mm-hmm.
core, I mean, part of it, let's just be open. I mean, there's revenue streams for the designer outside of just the interior design fees.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be supply, it could be
Yep.
product, it could be wallpaper, lighting,
Yep.
there's different things as a designer. And so understanding that relationship of what, the elbow space that can be created for the interior designer, understanding what suppliers and vendors you're working with, preferred
Mm-hmm.
salespeople. I mean, the list goes on. And then, as you
Yeah.
mentioned, what software are you using, who's going to be running the job, who's my communication channel. And so there's
Yeah.
all these different layers that
Yep.
you can break down. And as you understand that business model more, you become a huge asset to your other partners you're working with.
Exactly. Yep. I think it just takes so little time to create that sense of like, hey, we want to be your partner in this. We don't want you to see us as like an adversary or someone who's gonna. We just really want builders to know, like, hey, if you need something, just ask. If we're not doing well at something, just let us know. Like, it's just this kind of give and take, and we just really want to be supportive of the whole process. So,
Well, and
how do you
then, oh, go ahead. Yeah, ask me.
can I
Yeah,
ask you a
please.
question? So
Always.
you brought up the revenue streams. How do you guys handle that with designers? Are you procuring everything in your firm, or do you let designers kind of purchase some things along the way?
It's a great question. I'm glad you asked. And this goes back to the questionnaire. I think it's really important that communication is really important. So
Hmm.
of course, we have design firms that we've worked with for a long time. So we kind of, just as you do with some of your existing contractors, you kind of figure that out. In the very beginning, we're doing something similar. And I really try to understand the designer's business. And I try to understand they charge an hourly, they charge them per square foot. I want to understand their business model, what's the level of design book they're providing, what's the level of detail,
Hmm.
are they furnishing the
Yeah.
home, like there's all these layers that go through. And then ideally, and I'll answer that question in a minute, when the value I'm trying to bring my designer is that, okay, a lot of designers have an experience in the past where they've had to babysit the builder. They're on site every week. They have to factor in these massive project
Hmm.
management fees to the client because they're having to be
Yeah.
a superintendent of the project. And the value we're trying to bring is to say, okay, if we have a good design book and we have good communication through pre-con and we really clearly understand what you're purchasing, what I'm supplying, and so forth,
Hmm.
ideally, even on a 2-year build, you should be able to come out 3 or 4 times, right? And on these
Right.
key,
Yeah.
items, and we're going to send you a video every Friday and so forth. And so at the core, as we kind of work through that aspect, we do get into call it the nitty and gritty, where some designers, it's kind of all over. We have some that are very adamant that they want to supply certain aspects of the build, lighting,
Yeah.
wallpaper, cabinet hardware, mirrors. I mean, there's just certain things that they're like, we want to do that. And that's totally fine. We don't
Yeah.
have an issue with that, and we'll
Hmm.
coordinate, bath
Okay.
accessories sometimes. And then we have some designers that are like, I really don't want to touch anything building wise because I've been burned or I don't want to be on the warranty side. I will say on the scale, though, and there's a couple different ways to format that. Sometimes we carry the allowance in our line and then we pay the designer
Yeah.
for lighting. Sometimes we take it out of our scope and then they'll bill it on their side with the
Do it
furniture package.
separately.
Yeah. And so every designer is a little bit different how they like to make that work. And, we're very amicable that way because I understand the difficulty of the design world. But but at the end of the day, what's really important is there are certain, I don't want to say touch points, but as the builder, there's responsibilities from, and especially,
Hmm.
our projects are a little bit larger scale too. So it'd be really
Yeah.
hard for a designer to come in and supply all the tile, in a
Yeah.
20,000 square foot home. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah, that's one of those things that really isn't ever a sticking point because the designer's like, there's no way I'm touching that. 13
Right.
bathrooms, I'll pass. And so, a lot of
Yeah.
that stuff we're carrying just because there's a lot of liability and risk and warranty and so
Sure.
forth. But there's, it's pretty open. But typically, most clients or most designers are supplying some of those key ones, like mirrors and lighting and stuff, because they're good margin for
Okay.
them.
Yeah, for sure. But
What
I can
about?
feel the pain of everything you're mentioning. I think we typically are like, hey, we'll be happy to supply things like decorative lighting, mirrors, hardware, the things you just mentioned. Occasionally, there's like a tile that we might want to supply just in like a specialty area, like a backsplash, where we want to do something that we can't get from a place that the builder wants to work through. But for the most part, it's pretty much what you said. but it is interesting being a designer is you do have to get a little bit scrappy at times to just be able
Hmm.
to pull in some profit margin where possible. But I always hold my hands loosely open with all of that because I think on the build side there's so much logistic stuff that goes into creating a build that runs smoothly. So if a builder comes to me and is like, we have our system and we don't want you to really be in the midst of it, that's fine too
Hmm. Now,
on the purchasing side.
yeah, do you ever, I mean, are there certain products that, in addition to what I mentioned, like that you are trying to supply, Kate?
No, not really. I mean, I've heard like it's been interesting. I've been thinking about this recently. I've heard some designers who try to get in on the cabinetry or the flooring
Hmm.
or some, big things like that. And I'm having a hard time wrapping my brain around what that would look like. I mean, more power to them if they can make that work. But I think largely I try to really structure my design fees to where on a new build where I feel like we're really being compensated well for our kind of like advisorship through that process and our guidance through the process from a consulting standpoint, and then really let the profit margin, if there is any on product, just be kind of sprinkles and icing at that point. um, so, and obviously, an ideal project for us involves furnishing it and styling it to the
Hmm.
very end, like new construction plus furnishings and styling. That's our sweet spot. So, there's plenty of profit margin in the furnishing side that I don't feel like I need to dip into the construction side.
Avoid that risk, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Stay in my lane.
How many clients are typically engaging you for the full turnkey, through the furniture?
That's really, it's kind of become most of our clients. I wouldn't say
Hmm.
all, but we're really fortunate to kind of be falling into this track where it's people are bringing in a few things here and there, but a lot of times it's like a sofa from their old house that they're going to use in their rec room or something like that, and we're kind of starting from scratch. So that's kind of dreamy that we've fallen into that space because it's just about 4 years ago I was still doing much smaller projects, so we've been
Hmm.
able to really kind of progress quickly through some of the hurdles of growing, and I think a lot of that is largely owed to like just pursuing it hard and knowing where to look for new work that I've had a lot of learning from podcasts like Luann Nigara's
Land's
podcast.
awesome.
Uh-huh. And just believing that that is a possibility. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of mindset stuff, and then a lot of education, a lot of just showing up and doing the work every day, and a lot of hiring the right people too. That's been huge for us. So being able to create a team that can really truly do what you're selling that you can do, because it's one thing to sell the idea of being the advocate of the builder and the client and making this beautiful dream come true, but it's quite another to be there in the nitty gritty, and to stick with it through the process and not lose things. So my team is my whole universe. I rely on them heavily, so I'm super grateful for them.
So, any secrets to hiring then? I mean, if you have a great team, how did you find them?
So it's evolved over time. We're still a very small team, but I think it's looking for what you need in terms of filling your own gaps. So like if I could create myself from scratch, I would be much more able to like manage a spreadsheet and not lose my mind, but that's just not me. So I've hired someone who can do that. So I think some of it's luck and, being in the right place at the right time, but also just kind of like following your gut as far as personality goes, knowing that you need people, certain types of people around you. Like work does not, we don't have to all want to hang out after work together. We don't need to all want to go on vacation together, but we do need to be able to like feel really good about being shoulder to shoulder every day. So kind of having a good gut feel on what that looks like, because if you get that wrong, it can be a little stressful for people. But really, it comes down to sort of understanding where the holes are. um, right now we're kind of in growth mode again, and we've just hired a new person who will start in a couple weeks. I'm super excited for her to come join us. But it's just sort of like looking for the people that can fill in the gaps that where people are feeling overloaded. So right now we've got a lot of drawings that need to get done, and so we're looking to hire another person that can sit and do drawings all day and and be happy to do that all day. So um, yeah, I think it's just like really having that intimate knowledge of where things are feeling heavy for people, and then stepping in to provide assistance in that space.
Well, you mentioned, I mean, 2018, Kate Haynes design, you go to Noble Studio, kind of what transition, what made that
Yeah.
change?
Yeah, so that I transitioned to Noble Studio in the beginning of last year. And it was really, I actually never really wanted the business to be named after me, but I couldn't think of anything that I liked well enough to stick with. And so I think I really wanted to be able to grow it to something that was attracting talented people to come work for me that maybe wouldn't want to hide behind someone's name. And I don't feel the need to be like the spotlight. I also love the option to not have a client feel like they're missing out if I'm not in a meeting. I want to be able to, I do have a busy life. I have a big, messy life with my family. So I need to be able to kind of be there for the big, heavy hitting, important meetings and then let my team handle other things. And so I feel like if it's named after me, they might feel sad that I'm not in every meeting. Whereas if it's kind
Hmm.
of this is our studio, Kate shows up to certain meetings and she's not letting anything go out the door without her eyes on it and her approval and her hands on it. But also I don't need to be at every single thing. So that was part of it as well, just kind of like having this mindset towards growth and being able to make it about the team and not just about myself.
And
And
so,
the
yeah,
name Noble
yeah.
Studio came from this quote that I read. Deborah Needleman was the editor of Domino magazine for a long time, and she had this quote that creating a beautiful home is a noble endeavor. I'm butchering the actual quote right now, but there's this idea that it's noble to create a beautiful home, and I really loved that. That word stuck out to me as something to hold on to because I do think that for um, just for what we do, it could feel trivial to just all I do is like make people's houses beautiful every day, but it's actually a noble endeavor to create a sense of wellness and like wholeness in someone's space that they're living their life out of every day.
So now, with not just a name change, how has the company evolved with, focus on what clientele you're working for,
Mhm.
project size, team size,
Yeah,
operations, organization, all the different things that flow into it.
all of it. Yeah, it's all kind of going. It's sort of like all evolving together. So we, like I mentioned, in a relatively short period of time, we've really been able to kind of like go from working on one kitchen, one bathroom to whole houses and multi-million dollar projects and really high end, beautiful, luxurious homes. So I think that I was aware from the jump that being able to show up professionally for clients was really important to me in terms of like creating a brand that people could kind of lean into and trust as like your aesthetic expert for your house and designing all these little aspects. I felt like I needed to gain people's trust from the way that we presented ourselves in every aspect, down from like the logo to like any proposal documents. Every piece of information that passes through to a client needed to feel a certain way, and I was a little controlling about that and still am. um, so like I think that that's helped us to kind of evolve into that space because we've always sort of shown up as a trustworthy expert even in the little details. So that kind of carries through as we grow. I feel like I started out the business, even though I was doing small projects at the time, with a sense of professionalism that would allow me to do the bigger projects as well. So as we evolve, it's really like about creating new systems and processes all the time. This is like part of our weekly team meeting is like what's not working well and where do we need a new process. And then I have a person who's doing all of our process stuff. She's working on our SOP document right now, and it's been
Nice.
kind of a work in progress for a bit. And we've had this in many different iterations over the years, but we're trying to formalize it so that as we hire more team members, there's a process for kind of getting them up to speed quickly. But I love that stuff. I like geek out on all the process and systems stuff. And I think it's like, it just brings such a sense of peace, like to the team, to know that there's a way to do things. And if we just follow this recipe, that things will get done and things will not fall through the cracks and people will be happy. Because the design piece is really the easy piece. Like creating something truly amazing and beautiful on paper is one thing, and then really being able to deliver it and make a client feel taken care of the whole way through and make the builders feel taken care of the whole way through is completely different. So it's really just about shoring up those systems, creating systems that really are taking into account all the places where things have fallen through the cracks or whatever, and just learning from our mistakes and bringing that into like alignment with what our systems are. That's been a big part of our evolution.
Well, that's probably one of the most difficult things is that as a company, you evolve. Like you as a business owner, entrepreneur, Kate, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to be like, on projects internally, how you handle that. I mean, I have plenty. I could probably, well, I know I could
Uh-huh.
probably have 5 years of podcasts on this topic, but
Yeah, we need another episode about that.
yeah. So these mistakes happen, and your team will make them. So how do you incorporate that now? Mistakes made. How do you incorporate that to make people aware so it doesn't happen again without offending them, and make it part of your SOP? Right. That's a delicate balance.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Well, I mean, humor is helpful. We have like a whole graveyard of mistakes that are in storage, like a sofa that got ordered in the wrong fabric, for example, or, there's a whole host of things that are just kind of in our little graveyard of things. So we do laugh about it a lot internally. Just, what are you going to do? Like these team members are my people. Like I love them and I care about them and they're going to make mistakes too. And so we can laugh about it. We can figure out why did that happen? Where did the system break down? Where was there not a double check that there should have been a double check? And literally, like we use a project management software that has it all in little check boxes, so we just can slide in a new line item, like, before ordering the sofa. I mean, I'm not sure what happened on that particular project and why there's a floral sofa in storage, but we probably need to go through that one again. It hasn't happened since, I'll assure you of that. But the point is, you can just slide it into the process, like build in another check and balance to see that doesn't happen again. So I think it's really just about having a sense of perspective. Things are going to go wrong. It's okay. There's usually a pretty easy fix for it. I think it's really important to be solutions oriented and not just wallow in the feelings of it all. We can all feel our feelings for a second, then we're going to take a breath and figure out why it happened and take responsibility. That's another thing, is I'm really big about that on all of my like hiring documents. I talk about that openly early, that's something that I look for in teammates, is like the ability to just kind of own your stuff. I think that's been part of my personal evolution, just understanding, and I try to instill this in my kids constantly too, like we're responsible for our outcomes. So if something's not working well, let's figure out where we were responsible for that. And it may not be all in your court. There may have been something that someone else did, builder, client, whatever. But let's figure out where we could have done better and own that part of it. And I think that goes a long way towards like solving a problem collectively with a group. It's like leading with the, hey, here's where I screwed up and super sorry about that. Let's figure out what we can do to make it better and make it not happen again.
Yeah, there's something to be said about being open. Hey, I made a mistake, as opposed to trying to cover it up. I mean, I don't know. There's something
Yes.
very humble and, humility there that, it's a connector.
Yeah. You just jump through like all these stages to just like, let's get to the solution, enough with the covering it up. Let's just go figure it out.
Yeah. And it kind of, there's like many of us, there's a lot of quotes, we live by, and there's one that it's like, I don't care who's right. Let's get it right. And so you're thinking of,
Yeah.
Why finger point, especially as a builder? I mean, we get put in these circumstances daily with, he said, she said, or this happened, or it's so-and-so's fault. And it's just at the end of the day, it's like, okay, let's figure out a solution here. Like
it doesn't matter.
Balls
right.
dropped. Like, let's figure it out,
Let's pick it up and go.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So my team right now is excited about the process of change. I think like at times they like to laugh at me because I'm quick to kind of be like, oh, there's a new shiny process we could implement. So I think they're patient with me and like the different twists and turns of being led by someone who has a lot of ideas. So.
Yeah. That's a good thing though. That's a really good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Exactly.
So
I'm super grateful for them.
Yeah. So what keeps you up at night?
Oh man. I think so. I feel like when I turned 40, I'm 41 right now. I think that was my year of growing up and understanding a lot of things about life that I didn't before. It was the first time in my whole life I'd been completely on my own and financially responsible for myself through some tricky years leading up to that point. So found myself totally like on my own with my four kiddos and learning how to like manage finances and like run my life on my own. So I think what keeps me up at night still is just that sense of like there's no safety net. It's
Yeah.
just me running this business and feeding
Mhm.
my kids and like, just figuring it out as I go. So I think thankfully though, things are going super well. So it's still that sense of am I good? Like, is everything okay? Is the bottom going to drop out? But I think that that's probably just being human too. So,
Pretty normal. I think most of us can
yeah.
relate with that. And
Yeah.
then from a business side, I mean, what's upcoming and exciting? Some things that you're super, pumped about.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned early on the Fraser collaboration. That's super exciting. And we're finishing our office space. So we had the cool opportunity. We've been sort of camping out in their office for a while, and a space opened up next to theirs in this old mill building that they're working out of. So our space is beautiful on a corner with light on two sides, and it's going to connect to their space, and we'll also have our own entrance for our clients that are not their clients shared. So I'm just like super excited about all of that. Um, Got a lot of fun, exciting growth opportunities professionally right now. So
It's super exciting. I mean,
that's
it's
exciting.
amazing. And
Yeah.
then real quick, because one thing I do want to touch on that I think is unique to your story is that you said this early on that you had build experience, through college. And so, and you mentioned your partner's a builder, but you spent a lot
Mhm.
of time understanding the build process. And so how's that construction knowledge giving you kind of a leg up?
I think I think it just very naturally does. Like if you're in the business of creating homes that are constructed of tile and flooring and lighting and all the things, it's just so super helpful. Like the best compliment I ever got was being out on site one time, kind of troubleshooting a tile layout with some guys, some tile people, and they were like, "Oh, you seem like you know what you're talking about." Like normally we have to like really explain things to designers, and it was just kind of like I think that they were surprised by not only the level of like understanding already going into it, but also just the sense of like, no, I really want to know, like help me understand why, how does it need to go? Like why are we doing it this way? And then being able to understand that the next time we're drawing a tile layout in a bathroom, we have that much more understanding of thinking about where those terminations are, and if we're using this particular kind of tile and we don't want to use Schluter, what are our options? And thinking could we like recess the tile into the wall a little bit so the drywall comes up to meet it. Like we have a lot more of a sense of understanding of how things come together that help us to know what our options are. I think when we're designing it, it kind of opens up some possibilities that we may not have if we're just thinking about sort of the surfaces that overlay the build, if that makes sense. So
No, it
I feel like it gives
does.
us
I can
deeper
tell you
understanding.
from a builder perspective, when we work with designers and architects that have given a lot of thought to the constructability of it and not just
Hmm.
the visual element of it, it makes a big impact
Hmm.
because the construction side, especially when the designers get into the nitty and gritty, is I know you do, even looking at like slip coefficients on the product they're putting in the shower or back patios. I mean,
Yeah,
it's those little things that they're paying attention to, even, how's this going to
yeah,
wear and tear for the client? If they have little kids, are we picking something that's going to be a
exactly.
maintenance and now Brad's being called
Yeah,
because warranty? There's just so many aspects to
it's
that.
true. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the team member that I mentioned that was working on the builder questionnaire, she actually came to me from her. She has an architecture degree, and then she worked for several different high-end builders in our area doing their selection. So she is like very knowledgeable about all that stuff, and she's brought a whole new level to our team to be able to think through the exact questions that you're going to want to know the answers to as the builder. So I'm like super excited about how that layer has come in to help us as a team to be better all around.
Well, Kate, you've been amazing, especially sharing Noble Studio on
Thanks.
your journey. I mean, it's pretty incredible. And in just a short time, I mean, it's
Yeah.
just what, 6 years that you're really going after this and it's already have your own studio. It's pretty
Yeah.
impressive.
It is. It's really exciting. I'm super happy to be where I'm at right now. So, yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well,
Fun to chat.
for those listening, two things. What do you do for fun? And then, where can they find you?
I'm headed to Mexico this week, which I'm
Oh,
super
fun.
excited about with
Yeah.
my guy. Yeah, we need some R&R. That'll be really good. Um, so traveling has always been like a latent kind of hope for me and aspiration that because of life and kids and everything
Yeah.
hasn't really been super possible. So I feel like I'm on the cusp of entering my travel era, which I'm super excited
Good.
about. So we've got some exciting plans to run around the world a little bit in search of inspiration and all that stuff. And thinking through a lot of exciting plans together with building different opportunities. Lots of my partner has a really cool opportunity to build this little development that we're taking some risks on architecturally, a group of little lots that look over each other. So we're really excited about that too. So work is fun, I guess. That got lumped into the fun category.
Which you
Yeah.
should. You enjoy what you do. It's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And where can they find you, our listeners?
Yep. We're on Instagram, Noble Studio underscore interiors. I believe that's right. Noble Studio Interiors is our website. So, yep.
Well, Kate, you've been amazing. I appreciate making time today.
Thanks. Thanks, Brad. It's great talking to you.
If you get value from the show, please support us by giving a 5-star rating and review on whatever platform you listen to. And I also have a favor to ask. We've had some incredible guests that come on and share their wisdom, their knowledge about their business. So if you have friends or family members that could benefit from those episodes, please share it with them, as well as any other business owners that you're networking with that could get value from the podcast or certain episodes. Please share those as well. Again, subscribe, make sure you're following. Any questions that you have, topics. We've had listeners reach out about certain guests that we should have on the show. Again, brad.l@aftconstruction.com. Email me for topics to address, guests that we should have on, and even if you think you'd be a great guest for the show. So again, thank you for all your support, and we'll see you next time.